Hey, welcome to the Tom Ferry Show. Today, we're going to talk about 4 KPIs and specifically strategy, tactics, and scripts to dramatically increase your conversion in working with today's modern buyer. Now, this is going to be the short form version. I did about a 50-minute interview on video and on podcast. So if you want to listen to it, go to my podcast. If you want to watch the full 50 minutes, go to my YouTube channel and absolutely check it out. So right now, let's jump into some conversion with buyers today. Hey everybody, welcome to the Tom Ferry Show. You may notice a little different setting. This piece of content is going to be for brand new agents. It's going to be for veteran agents that want to improve on 4 primary KPIs in working with buyers. So stop for a second. If you're working with buyers and you want better conversion, better experience, more sales, you're going to love today's show and my guest. So here's what we're going to do. At the summit last August, I talked about 5 superpowers of the agent of the future specifically. So if you were with me, you remember this point because we weaved it throughout the entire 4 days together. Those 5 superpowers, in my opinion, are number 1, modern marketing, which means marketing to people in a relevant way in the medium that matters most to them, which then creates business development. That's the same piece, modern marketing and business development. The simplest way to describe it is to attract your tribe and ultimately convert to make the money that you want. That's the number 1 superpower. Number 2 is brand building, and really what it's about is scaling trust. Scaling trust. All I want for you is to be on the consideration set of more people that you don't know, and absolutely on the consideration set for a referral or a direct transaction of the people that you know. So, you've been watching the Tom Ferry Show. You've been listening to all my content. I've been talking about scaling trust over and over again, so we know that one. Number 3 is transferring your skills to your team. So yes, I'm making a bold statement that in the future, it's going to be very hard to compete as a solo individual agent. Now, if you're sitting listening to this now and you're like, wait a minute, I'm solo. No, you're not. You have a mortgage person, you have a title person, you have a manager. Everybody in real estate has a team. I'm arguing though, if you want to improve the experience for the consumer and be able to go on vacation, you got to have a team, right? And your ability to transfer your wisdom, transfer your skills, this is how I do it, is a massive superpower going forward. Number 4 is negotiation mastery, which we can talk about for days. But the reason I have Patrick Ferry here today is I want to talk about trusted advisor consultations versus sales pitches. Trusted advisor consultations versus sales pitches. So today, even though I've already given you the clue on who he is and you've seen him, if you're watching the video versus listening to the podcast, I want to introduce you to a newer agent, 4 years in the business in San Diego. Some would argue, Patrick, you are the most trained salesperson in all of real estate, even though you're only 4 years in the business, right? Just because of coaching and our family name and everything else. So super proud of you. Patrick, you're crushing it today on 4 KPIs with buyers. And I know this is a very long introduction, so just bear with me. 4 KPIs. So if you're listening right now, you're watching, especially if you're in a training right now in your office, the 4 KPIs that he is working on, please write this down. Number 1 is increasing conversations to appointments with buyers. Conversations to appointments with buyers. I want to talk to fewer people and get more appointments. Number 2, increasing the number of consultations done at the office, right, versus at the house or Starbucks or, over the phone. Increasing number of consultations at the office. Number 3, reducing the number of showings to an offer. Love that. And number 4, increasing offers written to offers accepted. That percentage, that ratio. So, Patrick.
Yes.
First of all, welcome to the show. That was a really long introduction.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Good to see you, my brother. So, look, we could go for days we should do a separate podcast training sometime, just the two of us, just talking about life and fun.
Love it.
Today, we want to help people work on the other half of every transaction. I think one of the great sort of missing elements of sales training, consultative selling, which is working with buyers today. So let's start with, in your mind, what were the 4 things you did in the beginning that didn't work that helped shape what you're doing today? Start there.
Yeah, I'll start there. And then just for a little bit of context, though, I think coming into being a coach with Tom Ferry, the obsession of my entire career and of all of the tribe was always on listing conversion.
Yes.
And so, when I started as a brand new agent, I was highly trained and I had every skill set to convert anyone who's thinking of selling into a contract and into a close.
Yep.
And so I was clueless with what to do with buyers.
Yes.
And so that
I appreciate that honesty.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
like, I don't even know what to do, right? And
Yeah.
in San Diego, I had to do open houses, and I was terrible.
Yes.
And so what I noticed now, 2-3 years later, was wow, okay, here's the things that I was doing that totally wasn't working.
Yes.
So the first thing that I was doing was I was obsessing over getting people to sign in.
Yeah.
Okay, how am I gonna get you to sign in? Where do I put the
How
thing?
am I going to close you to get you to, yeah.
Do I put it over here? Do I walk away? Do I put the brochure here? What do I say?
So the seller says you have to sign in?
Yeah, the lie of the seller has to sign in, but it's a vacant house. This is weird. So there's all kinds of funny sign-in stuff that goes on, and it's a distraction. The second thing is I was trying to qualify the buyer the moment I met them.
Yes.
And we're constantly like, qualify them, qualify them, qualify them. And the one phrase that I think every real estate agent should eliminate out of their head is, are you pre-qualified?
Yes.
That was like the stupidest question I've ever heard, but
Yes.
I was doing it.
Yes.
Are you guys pre-qualified?
Why did that not work?
Well, because it's just insulting. You need a little relationship before you start talking to people about finance.
Yeah. So keep going.
And
What
that,
else?
And that's so true. So, and then the third thing that I saw was I was obsessed over my automated follow-up program.
Yes.
What CRM am I going to put them in? Is it going to be a text message, an email, a video? And should I do 3 a day, 10 a day? And it was like, the 10 days of pain and suffering. And it was like, wait a minute, this is just so weird, right? And none of that kind of
Weird?
automated was working.
What do you mean weird?
Weird because it was like, I barely meet you and I'm trying to qualify you, trying to get you, and then I'm putting you into an email sequence or some text message sequence. And for some reason, those were never working.
Yes.
Right? And I was like, okay, what is the deal here, right? It was driving me crazy. And then I think the fourth mistake was I was actually treating everybody as if they were in the transactional phase.
This is big.
Not the research phase. So which I was basically saying, hey, can I send you some off-market properties? Just like these types of offers.
Yes.
And people are like, no, I don't really care for that.
Are you saying that those things are wrong?
No, not at all.
Are they in the research phase or the transactional phase?
Yes. So
Tell us more about it, and what's the question you asked to discover? Like, help us understand that.
So yeah, I figured out one question that changed the game for me, and it was, how familiar are you with this community, this neighborhood? And what I discovered was people were like, hey, I'm just here checking it out for the first time.
Yeah.
That immediately told me that they're just researching communities and neighborhoods. And then if someone said, oh, well, I'm very familiar with this. Well, A, that might clue me into, are they a neighbor? And then B, the people that are really familiar, then the next question naturally was, well, how many properties have you seen in this community? And when they're like, oh, I've seen them all.
Yes.
And they're game face on. We already know that's a transactional buyer. They are looking for the right house right now.
Yes.
Okay. So what I noticed is when I was offering kind of services and trying to get them for me as a buyer, the people that were in the research phase, they wanted something different.
Yes.
And the people in the transaction phase really wanted something very specific.
Yes.
And so when I changed the game, boom, I started getting way more showings. I started getting way more consultations because I was addressing where the consumer was at in the journey.
Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo, bingo, bingo. I
Totally.
love it. All right. So I know everyone listening, I know you're getting this. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to break down the 4 KPIs that he is paying attention to, he and his coach. And then we're going to talk about strategy, tactics, and scripts where appropriate. So if you're taking notes, which I strongly recommend, we're going to go through each one of these. And you might want to start by asking yourself first, where is the breakdown in my conversion, you with me, on these of these 4, right? So the first one is increasing conversation, The first one is increasing conversion to conversations to ultimately appointments, right? The second one is increasing the number of in-office buyer consultations. The third one is how do you reduce the number of showings to an offer written? And the fourth one is how do you get more offers accepted?
Yes.
So let's talk about the first one, Patrick, increasing conversion on conversations to appointments. Talk to less people, get more appointments. What's the strategy?
So the strategy is, what I noticed is what the consumer was attracted to. What do the buyers want from us as real estate agents when they're meeting us for the first time, either at an open house or an internet lead? It doesn't matter. And so I started to really think that through, and eventually I came to 3 conclusions. Conclusion number 1 is, and you actually are the one that kept telling me about this over and over again and telling all of the Tom Ferry world, you're saying the consumer, the buyer is looking for the hyper-local expert. So it took me a while to figure out what does that mean and how do I deliver that? And so when I was doing an open house in my farm, in my neighborhood, the buyer would walk in and I'd say, hey, how familiar are you with, at that time I was living in the Costa Valley, Carlsbad, and they would say, well, not really very familiar with this neighborhood at all. And so then I would just start sharing with them. Oh, well, this is what's going on with the HOA. And by the way, I was taking my kid through the trails over here. It's so much fun. And then it's all walkability over here. And then, the different models in this community are, and the price points are. All of a sudden, I started seeing people were leaning into me and started to ask me a lot more questions. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. So I started experimenting with, okay, well, what do I share with the person that walks in the door that I know if they are a research phase buyer or even a transactional phase buyer that they don't know about this community? And that I could share with them that will then cause them to be like, oh, he knows stuff that I don't know. Because they've been online and doing all the research, right? Okay.
Exactly.
So the second thing that I noticed was if I can demonstrate resourcefulness as a real estate agent. Now, what does that mean? Well, just think fix or flip, right? So everybody loves these Bravo flip shows. And what do they love? They love to see people transforming homes and they love to see the numbers break down. So as a real estate agent, because now that we have, we fixed and flipped our last home and then we just bought a new house and completely remodeled it. Now, when someone comes through the door and they're looking at this property, I can say, hey, to replace those windows, here's how much it would cost. Don't worry about the green carpet in the hallway. I got a guy who can just remove that, no problem, that's no big deal. What I started noticing was when I could provide solutions to what I knew the buyers were going to be a little frowning, they're like, oh, well, there's chips over there and that, and there's this and there's that, and there's this and there's that. And they over-exaggerate how much it's going to cost to fix all that stuff. When I can kind of demonstrate subtly, no big deal, we get that done. Psst, before you even move in, this, that, and the other, I got a guy,
here's the price, here's the cost, this is what it's going to look like.
They were like,
the bones of the house are already X, let's turn it into your dream home.
Yeah, this is a killer floor plan. This is a great location. We can transform this stuff for 15 grand before you move in, no problem. All of a sudden, they were like, whoa, it's much better to be walking through a house with that guy than it is. And the funniest thing I had was, I had this couple say to me, hey, I learned more in 5 minutes talking to you than I did all day looking at properties with this other agent. And that's why I was like, oh, interesting.
Consultative selling, being the local expert and having a unique factor that the average agent doesn't have. And a lot of agents are watching this saying, well, I know all that stuff and I do that stuff. And I guess I would say to you, are you acknowledging the impact that that's having? Because that's what you're seeing here. What was number 3?
Number 3 was, what was number 3, by the way?
Hyper-local expert. Resourcefulness versus not.
Oh, yeah. The last one is that there's some competitive advantage working with you than anyone else. So again, this is what buyers are attracted to. So we got to think that one through, right? So do you offer something? Like I was talking to the great agent Randy Orr, and we were just talking about, hey, what could we kind of offer to the buyer that there was a little incentive to work with us versus anyone else. Now, I also figured out, though, is if you're like, hey, I know this listing agent. I've already had a great conversation with them, right? And they're like, oh, you know them. And I'd say,
we have a better working relationship.
Yes,
Our offers get accepted,
yes.
etc.
So I was on a vacant property, a boutique broker. I was on their open house, which, by the way, that's the secret to getting more open houses, by the way. All you new agents who are whining, I can't get an open house. Well, there's a few ways to do that, okay? So when I said, hey, I know the listing agent, I've already talked to him, I've discussed with them a little bit about market value, and so we've talked about kind of where the offer, I think an offer can get accepted. Boom, the buyers are like, whoa, well, tell me about that. And hey, like, what is that? And then when I shared with them, like, kind of what I would do to negotiate against the listing agent, they were like, oh, he's got a plan, he's got a strategy, and he can help me get this property.
Yes.
Okay. So when the inventory was super low in the last couple of years, the buyers were always looking for that advantage. That's why they were calling the listing agent.
100%. 100%. So we just talked strategy on increasing, conversion.
Yep.
Are there any scripts or any tactics that you found in, tactical approaches to get to the yes, or scripts to get to the yes that's helped you?
Yeah. So I found 2 questions to be super valuable. Number 1 was, has anyone reviewed with you? Okay. Yeah. So has anyone reviewed with you blank, blank, blank? So if you're in the research phase,
the differences between community A, B, and C.
Exactly.
Right.
Research phase. Oh, well, you're looking at Costa Valley for the first time. Cool. Well, have you looked at the greens? Have you looked at this? Has anyone taken the time to review with you the pros and cons of each one of those communities and what your purchasing power can get you and kind of what your deal breakers are? And what are they going to say? They're like, no. No one's done that.
Yeah. Purchasing power, the difference between the 2 communities, and what was the third one?
And the third one was, what are your kind of your lifestyle priorities and deal breakers? Yeah. Here's the 3 again. So number 1 has anyone reviewed with you the different communities and the pros and cons of those communities? Right? And that's very helpful to a research phase buyer. They're like, no, like, I want that. Because they don't want to be driving around town. They don't want to be spending 2 hours a night, searching online to try and figure it out. Yeah. If they can have one consultation with an agent to save them 4 hours and 4 weekends, bam. And most of the good agents, you guys do that. This is amazing.
Yes.
Okay. The second thing is really purchasing power. What I noticed is, so when we bought our house in Solana Beach, now, Solana Beach is a small beach community in San Diego. There are a certain number of types of properties you can get, and our purchasing power could only get us so far. So we had to make some clear distinctions around what type of property could we get in that community and how were we going to make it work. So how was our purchasing power going to move the needle in that community? So a lot of agents, we know this, we talk about this, but it's not really inside a context that we kind of express powerfully to the consumer.
Has anyone showed you the differences in your purchasing power?
Exactly.
And love
it. Totally. Right. Then the third one is really kind of lifestyle priorities and deal breakers. Right. What do you want to experience?
And I love the deal breaker side. Like I would overemphasize that. Totally. Like, and what are your deal breakers?
Yeah. So
they know them, but they probably haven't expressed them, written them out, and actually had somebody take the time to help them sort of codify that.
Yep, exactly. And so what I just noticed that, like, down the road with a buyer, and this is how I reduced the number of showings to an offer. Is because I started to figure out their deal breakers faster. Therefore, I can say, let's not go look at that one. That's got this, that. You guys aren't going to want that. You're not going to like that. You're not going to like that. And then they were on the same page with me because they knew that I knew. Right. And so that was a little trick there. Now, one more little trick on the open house when they came in. If you actually tell the deal breaker of the house to the person that just walked into the house, they love it. Right. You've been talking a lot about trust. Well, what's one way to get trust as a salesperson in a sales environment? You tell the deal breaker. And I said that one time. I sold 2 properties from one open house, and I said, guys, look, this lot right here has a weird angle, and if you don't like the road noise above that, this is not going to be the right house for you. I said that to them, and they're like,
as they're walking into the open house.
no, after
I know, yes.
I was sharing all the great
Yes.
stuff about the community, but I wanted to share that deal breaker.
Yeah.
Bam. They were like, wow, we can trust him.
Yes.
It just moved the needle. And I was like, that was cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So deal breakers. Let's jump into one more little script that I learned. Okay.
Yep.
And that is, has anyone taken the time to do a buyer consultation with you yet?
Yeah.
Has anyone taken the time to do a buyer consultation with you yet? Because we all know, and all of the agents know this, they probably have 4, 5, 6, 7 agents sending them emails with listings.
Especially in the research phase.
With Zillow and Redfin and everybody else. So their inbox is full, and everybody's talking about the same thing. Bedrooms, baths, square feet, price point, want to see it, want to see it, want to see it.
Yeah.
So if you can differentiate by saying, has anyone taken the time to do a buyer consultation with you yet?
Yep.
Bam. Now let's do one more script for the transactional phase buyer. Okay, I'm going to make you guys some money right now. Are you guys okay with that?
Yes.
Let's just do one script that makes a lot of people a lot of money in 2020. And that is, hey, has anyone taken the time to review all of the off-market properties to see if any of those would be a good fit for you? Because the transactional buyer, the person looking for the perfect home, that's what they want.
Yeah.
And their agent for sure hasn't done it, right? So now, again, this whole
Give me the script
it's
again.
not,
Has
anyone taken the time to review all of the off-market properties to see if any of those would be a good fit for you?
I want to do 2 things here. Any scripts that you use additionally to get the consultation, specifically at the office.
Yes.
Because I'm imagining some people say, meet at the office.
Yep.
Right? And then secondly, I want you to run us through the process of the actual consultation.
So the bottom line is there's really no, I would say, sexy script for getting someone to meet me at the office.
Yeah.
It's really at this point.
How do you frame it?
If you've demonstrated a bunch of these things and you said, hey, let's get together at my office because what I want to do is I want to go through those communities with you. I want to pull up Google Maps. I want to pull up all the properties. And I just want to walk through all of these things with you guys and do a deep dive.
Yeah.
I literally that wasn't even a script. That's just what I want to do with them.
Yeah.
And they're always a yes.
Yeah. So ideal property, lifestyle, deal breakers, buying power, community by community. How long does the consultation take?
You know what? That one took at about an hour. I'll be honest. If you do this well and you have a great time with them and you're clicking with the customer, you're going to take an hour.
How do you know when it worked and how do you know when it didn't?
That's a great question. I'll be honest, and this is kind of where the KPI setup is because what I noticed is, and I told you this the other day, it was so funny. I was like, look, every time I do a buyer consultation in the office, I have closed those buyers.
Yes.
Every time I am bedrooms, baths, square feet, listing alerts, text message, want to see it, want to see it, want to see it, I literally don't. I have horrible conversion over
You're
there.
competing against Zillow, Realtor, Redfin, and 5 other agents.
Yeah.
They can all do that much easier and much more convenient.
Let's talk about transactional. So some of the big issues in the low inventory market was, we were getting 4, 5, 6 offers on a property. So I needed to debrief them on, hey, we need to understand list price versus sold price.
Yes. This is also where deal breaker buying power and all that stuff comes back into play because, hey, if you're not willing to be competitive with your offer, then what are the deal breakers or what, should we be, edging down in our price range or in our expectations?
Yep. The next thing, of course, is with the transactional buyers, I want to review any of that research of the off-market properties.
Yes.
And I could show them right there. I can go in the MLS and I can be like, look, this, you can see this is a withdrawn, this was a canceled, this was an expired. Let's take a look at some of these things.
Yeah. So now we're going into number 3, which is how do we reduce the number of showings, right, to offers written, right? Which we've covered a little of that. And then, of course, how do we get more offers accepted? So a little combination of the two.
100%. Because that's what the transactional buyer is looking for.
Yeah.
They're looking for that advantage. You
Yes.
give them the advantage. You show them what to do. They love you. They're loyal. They're yours.
Any other tactics for the research phase consultation versus the transactional phase consultation? Any subtle language or?
Let's look at a couple of the basics, which is our job is to get them to be set up into our world of our communication. So I need to show them. So I'll show them, hey, here's my CRM, and I'm going to set up your saved search right here. Let's take a look. Do you want me to do this or that, this or that? And now when you get
That's actually beautiful.
Yeah. Then when you guys get this email, this is a really important thing. I say, so here's the game. Okay. I want to be able to do the research on that perfect property, and we need to be like the first ones on it. Okay, so if you see that listing before me, text me right away.
Love it.
It's really important to set up that team, and then, hey, here's the action plan, right? You know, we've been in coaching and consulting for our entire lives, so it's like, hey, coaching clients, by
Here's
the
the
way,
action plan. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, here's what we need to do this week, right? Here's your homework assignment.
Yeah.
Give them some homework assignments and say, hey, here's what you're going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. Very simple stuff, but it's just the things that work, right?